Hi, I'm Jessie Flashone Campbell, and I'm the music director at Westview Church, and I'm going to talk to you about Haydn's Little Organ Mass. We're going to be performing Haydn's Little Organ Mass this Sunday on Palm Sunday to kick off our Holy Week, and it's going to be a really special experience. I hope you come check it out. Let's dive in. Franz Joseph Haydn was a composer living in the classical period, and he wrote this mass for this order of monks called the Brothers of Mercy. They had a hospital in Eisenstadt, Austria, and right around the time when the American colonies were having their revolution, Haydn was composing this short little mass. Now, this Brothers of Mercy hospital was a place that took care of the sick and the poor. And so this needed to be a Missa brevis for two reasons. First, it needed to be short so that they could get back to the business of taking care of the sick and the poor. Second, it needed to not have a whole ton of singers and instrumentalists and instruments and organs and, a full complement that might be in some other churches, because their chapel in the hospital was little itty bitty and barely 3 string players and an organ and a small choir could fit. So it needed to be something somewhat truncated. Now, there are 6 movements in this Mass. We have the Kyrie, we have the Gloria, we have the Credo, which is the Nicene Creed, we have the Sanctus, we have the Benedictus, and then finally the Agnus Dei. Movement 2 is the Gloria, and Haydn does this thing called telescoping, where every voice, the sopranos and the altos and the tenors and basses, all have some different words that they're singing all at the same time. Musically, it sounds lovely. It sounds coherent. The basses come in with, and the tenors and altos and sopranos have right? It does sound nice, except they all have different words, and it calls up this feeling of Pentecost a little bit, where you have a whole bunch of different people speaking in different languages, praising God all at the same time. It's exciting, it's bombastic, it's spiritual, and it's a bit chaotic. That's because the Gloria text is wordy. Let's be honest, there's a lot of words in it, and to help speed things along, Haydn does this telescoping effect. Haydn also does this during the Credo, again trying to get through as much text of the Credo at the same time. However, when we get to the important parts of the Mass text, for example, the Et Incarnatus, this is the part of the Creed where we're talking about Jesus taking on flesh and becoming human. Haydn makes a big deal out of this. So the beginning of the Credo is bombastic and it's exciting and it's a little bit marchy. And all the parts are singing different words at the same time. And then we have this quick tempo change, this quick mood change right around when we're talking about the incarnation of Christ. It's quiet, and there's almost this sense of the baby Jesus being born into the world. There's just this little bit of tenderness in this moment. And then Haydn has some text painting. Text painting is where you make the music sound like the meaning of the words. He does this in multiple parts, but for example, in the Crucifixus section, the basses are all alone. No other voices are singing, and they're singing this somber, descending, a little bit ominous, Crucifixus etiam pro nobis supantio Pilato. He was crucified for us under Pontius Pilate, and they have have this descent into death. But the strings tell us a different story. The strings have this going on. Strings have this rising figure while the basses are singing about crucifixion under Pontius Pilate. The strings are telling us the resurrection is coming. The choir then comes in. This is in the credo, and they're singing the part where Jesus dies, passus, and is buried, et sepultus est. And it's kind of a static moment for the choir. It's long notes, they're staying very similar, and it's a little bit crunchy harmonically. There's this tension and it doesn't feel great. So they have this and it's just very static. But again, the strings are telling us a different story. So instead of being just one note, they have and as you can hear, there's this moving forward. The strings are telling us Jesus's death isn't the end of the story. And so we go right into the allegro, which means really fast. It's again, very joyful, very exciting. We're talking about the resurrection. And again, all the parts start singing different words at the same time, and it's got that same joyful Pentecostal celebration to it. Now, you can tell a lot about a composer's theology by the way that they set music to text that has been around for centuries. A prime example of this is the Agnus Dei. It's our sixth and final movement of the Mass. And the text is, Lamb of God, who takes away the sins of the world, have mercy upon us. And you say that 3 times, and then it says, Lamb of God, who takes away the sins of the world, grant us peace. Different composers have different attitudes about this. Mozart in his Requiem and his Grand Mass in C minor, Beethoven in the Missa Solemnis. These are very angsty prayers, almost a question of, will God grant us mercy? Will God grant us peace? It hasn't been answered. Haydn has a totally different story. It's almost a foregone conclusion. It's just a moment of settledness, of quiet reflection upon the peace of God that is granted because of what Christ has done for us. So the basses do some call and response. They start us off with Lamb of God. And then the whole choir comes in on the words, who for us, and it sounds like, and then it's a forte and it's a strong thing. And then after that is this piano, this quiet, thoughtful, takes away the sins of the world. And then we have mercy upon us. This is repeated 3 times with the basses leading the call and the choir responding. And then we move into the Dona Nobis Pacem section, which is the grant us peace. The tenors take us away with this very calm, smooth, just kind of steadying boundary, if you will, of the call, Dona Nobis Pacem. But the altos and basses have this delightful little eddying around it. It's kind of like around the banks of a river. You have the steady bank and then you have these little eddies that are around it. And that's kind of what the altos and the basses are doing on the then the altos pick up the same idea. And then the sopranos and tenors have the little eddying duet. We do it a 3rd time with the whole choir, and then there's just this amazing kind of sigh. Christ has granted us peace. We are good. And when you're ending a major work like a mass, people do it in different ways. A lot of times there's this triumphant finish and this very yes, we have finished this giant work. Haydn does something different. The mass just kind of fades away into pianissimo, which means extra quiet. It's just this very gentle, sweet, settled and calm end to this work. This is how it goes. The altos start us off, and then the sopranos, and then the basses, and then the tenors. And then there's just a couple little more notes from the strings, and it's just this very peaceful thing. Imagine, if you will, that you're a brother of mercy and you've got patients up the wazoo, and you've got to provide medical care to people who are in a great emergency, huge crisis. This mass is just this gift of peace for a little bit of time on a Sunday morning before going back out to do the service of God. So, thank you for joining me in this exploration of the Missa brevis. I hope to see you on Sunday. This is going to be a really special event, and I hope this meant something to you and is providing a more worshipful experience. Take care and see you soon.